Are you sick and tired of feeling like you're screaming into a void when you're marketing your business? It doesn't have to be that way. And Dr. Michael's here today. He's going to tell us a little bit about himself, why this topic matters to him, and why it should matter to you. Michael, welcome to the show.
Welcome, Shauna. Great to be here. Yeah, I mean, yeah, you speak to absolutely my heart here because it's what got me started on that journey. Because from my education, I'm actually a computer scientist, and the reason I'm today I'm communications coach is that I was so frustrated with all these great ideas that haven't been heard by people because they weren't communicated properly, because there was someone who had a brilliant idea, who was brilliant at what he did, speaking to a brilliant crowd, for example, at a conference or inside a meeting in a company, and that idea was thrown into a trash bin because nobody got the point, right? Because they were so deep into their own thoughts and the way that the things that they felt passionate about, that they forgot to tell us and the audience why they should care about and why they should be as passionate about that thing. And that's what got me started, and that's why I started to write my blog, and how people reached out, and that's why I'm today here helping people find those words, right?
That's amazing. It truly is. Because when you think about it, I don't think anybody would think, oh, yeah, computer science, tech, yeah, total communications person. Like, who would, that's not the natural connection that people typically make. But if you actually sit in it for a minute and you realize, wow, how can we streamline our communication? That kind of jives with tech, right? Because when you're looking for using technology and computer sciences to make life easier, to make things
Yeah.
faster, to streamline all of your processes. So why wouldn't you want to do that with your communication?
Absolutely. I mean, yeah, you're totally right. So it usually gets me some blank stares when I tell people that I'm actually a computer scientist because, as you mentioned, computer scientists are supposed to be those pale guys sitting down in the cellar and eating pizza the whole day and never seeing even a ray of sunlight, right? But but I think that that's not how it is in real life. But you're totally right that one thing that gets really great attention in computer science is to structure things and to prioritize things and to conquer problems from and break it down to, so what's the most relevant thing here? What are we trying to achieve here? And how can we approach that thing in a way that makes the most sense and that makes the most impact? And that's certainly something that helps you when you try to make sense of your story, your product, your great idea, and want to figure out, so how do I get people to see the brilliance of that? So how do I structure that problem? How do I what do I prioritize, and what's the thing that gives us the most impact here?
Yes, and
Well,
this
and then
is
and
so.
that, yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, but like this is crucial. Like if anybody doesn't know how crucial this is to your marketing, I need to reinforce the mess. You can market for days and days. I was just saying you could be waving your flags, all of the flags, grab whatever flags you can and wave them, wave them, wave them. If you're not waving the right flag, if your messaging isn't honed in, clear, and directly addressing not only what you do, who you are, but also who you're serving and what they need, it doesn't matter. So doing that, the right thing, really honing in on what you're saying, your messaging, makes all the difference in whether or not you're heard, never mind the conversion that follows.
Yeah, and you're making a great point here because, as you put it, I mean, it's not about the flags that you like best, right? It's about the flags that resonate with your audience, right? And that you need to make that shift in perspective. So as long as you're just focusing and obsessing over all the things that you're proud of and that you think are so great, you're just speaking to that inner voice of your inner genius of you. But the moment that you step out to get others excited about your idea, you have to ask yourself that question. So what gets them excited? What's the point when looking from their perspective?
Yeah. And then I just want to bring up too, I suppose a bit of a question form is that when you're doing that, You don't have to let go of the things you love, correct? You
Mhm.
can still take those things that you love, those things that you value most, and use them strategically to connect in a very deep way with your prospective audience.
Yeah, that's one thing that I mean the fact that you've dug so deep that you know so much about your field and that there's so many facets to it for you, that's one of the reasons why you're so good at it, right? And that which enables you to nail it and get to that point. But the other aspect to that is that you don't, well, you can stretch that out in time, right? The point isn't that you throw everything at your audience at once, hoping that something sticks or even that everything sticks, which it never does. It's much more like you need to figure out or you want to figure out what's the one thing that makes them curious to want to hear the second thing. So what's the thing that starts us into a conversation rather than just throwing everything that you think is so brilliant at them and then, well, letting them just deal with it. But you much more want to engage in a conversation, and all it takes is to have that one point of curiosity that sparks that conversation.
That's beautiful, because there's so many people who want to use marketing as a magic bullet, as a quick fix to all of their business problems. And the problem with that is that marketing really is a long-term game. We are establishing ourselves. We are making strategic connections. We are starting the conversation, depending on where your audience is on their own journey within your world. And so you need to have a very multifaceted approach that gives them bite-sized pieces. What is that people say? How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. It's the same with marketing.
Yeah, exactly.
I
Yeah.
love that. And you talk about too the idea of persuasion, because a lot of people feel really icky when it comes to marketing and sales. They're like, oh, I need to convince somebody, I need to persuade someone. But you've got a different view on that, don't you?
Yeah, I mean, the whole point of persuasion is that, well, you want people to do something that they originally didn't want to do, right? Because if they would have wanted it, you didn't have to persuade them. And that essentially means that you're applying kind of a force to them, right? You're pushing them into a certain direction or pulling them, like a magnet, trying to well, in however you look at it, you're applying some kind of force. But force tends to create counterforce, right?
Right.
We don't like to be persuaded. So as soon as we smell like that marketers trying to persuade us, we're immediately becoming skeptical. And we look for the, so what's off here? So what is he trying to hide here? And I think that a much better way or an easier way to market is to figure out what it is that people actually want in the first place. So, and how what you have to offer to them gets them what they want. And how what you have to offer aligns with some probably deeper desire or struggle or aspiration that they have, so that you can stop persuading them and start resonating with those things.
Absolutely. It goes back to that starting a conversation and building the relationship. People are
Yeah.
going to want to work with you when they know you. When they're like, yeah, you know what? That's a good point. I do want to have this conversation with you. I do want to explore how we could potentially help one another in our lives and businesses. That makes it a lot easier, doesn't it? Inside and out.
Yeah, I mean, it's not that post that you put up that should be the end of the conversation, right? That's all you have to say, and when they've seen it, then all is said and done. No, it's the next statement that you've made, which hopefully encourage them to engage deeper with you and to want to hear your next statement, to connect with you, to follow that page, and to hear the next, so that like Seth Godin calls that you get permission to talk to them more.
Yes. Yes. I love that so much. Permission to talk to them more. And that goes with, I mean, I know I've seen so many people now. I feel like it comes in waves where people will say, what is up with this particular message that I'm receiving? And it's across the board. Everybody gets this cold message, and the message will always be the same. And it will always have a link, and it will always instead of asking permission to talk, it's assuming that permission has already been given. And how many of us, and you can all respond in our comments and everything, how many of us go, ha, no, immediate no?
Yeah.
Because that's consent is the thing.
Yeah.
It doesn't
And
matter what the topic is. Consent, guys. Come on.
yeah. And that's the big difference. I mean, yeah, as you put it, the persuader will make the decision for their customer. They have already decided that that's the best thing that a customer could buy. And the person who resonates, they leave that decision to the audience, and they can do that. They can trust their audience with that decision because they've started their journey way earlier. They listened to what they have to say. They had those conversations and figured out what their struggles and their desires are. And they can tell a story that leads their audience to that point of no return, where they can wholeheartedly trust the audience with making the decision, because they have made them see something that they cannot unsee anymore easily, right? And so, yeah, it's your decision, but you're going to make it in full sight of the truth, right?
I love that. And that empowered, informed decision making. And that actually goes back, just quickly, that goes back to the building a story brand model, where Donald Miller says, your customer or your client is the hero of their own story, not you.
Yeah,
And so
exactly.
you need to empower them to be able to make that choice for themselves. This is very important stuff. Now, empowering them to do that, you mentioned something here about giving them that transformative information, that thing that they can't unsee. That's a pretty big ask. How do we do that? How do we give them that sort of realization?
Well, one step at a time, right? It's not that it's very unlikely that you find that magical thousand songs in your pocket slogan that just nails it, and it's all you have to say. But one step at a time, willing to engage in the conversation, willing to listen to the feedback that they give there, and stopping to be right and starting to get it right. So not being frustrated when your first attempt at telling your story probably doesn't nail it and doesn't lead you to that point of no return, but taking that as information to refine your story and try it a second time with a slightly different story arc, with a slightly different tweak, taking into account what you've learned in between.
So I know that we very, very briefly touched on in our own conversations in the past, this idea of like the aha moment. And then there's also like, how are you going to wow your person? Like how does that fit into this conversation?
Well, yeah, I think there's a common misconception here that this point of no return would be somehow related to the wow effect, right? And that's what a lot of my colleagues talk about. And what actually a lot of the communication in public speaking industry is about, creating that big show moment, that and wowing your audience as much as possible. But I tend to look at that a little differently, because I always wondered what use it is when you get your audience to cheer for what a great show it's been, when what you actually want them to cheer for is what a great idea it is, right? And
Oh.
the thing is that wow effects can actually be bought by money, right? You want some wow, hire Taylor Swift, or do your presentation on a roller coaster. That's probably as wow as it gets, right? But it's not going to create any kind of aha, and unless there's that profound moment of insight, that profound moment of where I see, well, that makes sense. And actually, a second layer, and not only does it make sense, but it also feels right. Right, when those two layers click together, the brain agrees and the gut says, well, it also feels right. Yeah, I totally see that. That's when you reach that point of no return. And that's what a wow effect rarely gets you. Well, as I tend to look at it, is that, well, wow effects have their place, right? It's what opens the mind. It's what gets you the attention. But once you have the attention, you need to lead them all the way down to that profound moment of insight, which is what I call the aha effect.
That is really cool. Like, truly, just I'm sitting here going, man, oh man, it's eureka. Everything going from, I really see this as that going from, you're kind of in the fog. You're sitting there going, okay, sure. And those wows will kind of catch your attention and you'll navigate that, sure. But then once you get to that eureka moment, that aha moment, that's when those wows don't even need to be there anymore because the fog is cleared. You don't need the lighthouse steering you away from the rocks because the fog's gone and you can see it for yourself. You've got it. You know
Yeah.
the right way. That is so cool. I really like the
Yeah.
way you put that.
And you know what? Often it tends to be that those aha moments aren't fancy or spectacular at all, right? These are often actually down to earth, because actually relevance beats elegance, right? And tangible beats fancy, right? Going back to that 1,000 songs in a pocket that we mentioned earlier, there's nothing fancy about that. It's a simple statement in plain English. There's no wow about that. It's just stating and capturing the desire that people had at that those 20 years back when the iPod was introduced. They just captured that feeling of, man, I want to carry my whole music library with me. And that's just what they captured in that. And there's nothing fancy about that. It's just plain English. So, and that means the way to get to that aha moment is to ask the right questions. It's not to have all the answers. It's to ask the right questions. So what's going on in my audience's, my customers' world? What's causing them a headache? What are the problems that they desperately need solved? And then find a way to make that visible using words. You find by finding the right words. And that's what Apple excelled at with that iPod slogan. To find a way to make visible what a 3 GB portable MP3 player is, right? They made that visible and tangible for people who had no idea about what that means.
And it was so easy. Like conceptually easy. A thousand
Yeah.
songs in my pocket. And
Yeah.
I can say that, you can say my kids, they're 5 and 6 and 9 years old. They get it. If I said you could carry that 1,000 songs in your pocket, they get it.
Yeah.
It's so
And
accessible.
again, that's not the whole story, right? It's
No.
just the entry point. So if that makes me curious, I'm going to head on to the webpage and want to find out more. And it's not that this statement or that slogan is to replace the whole story. That's not the point here. It's the entrance. It's what makes the complexity that's underneath accessible. It's what makes me curious to want to know more and engage with you.
That's perfect. And it makes it, I love the word, that word accessible, and also tangible, something that you understand quickly that makes you open the door, like you said. That's so cool. And then how is it that you can then play off of the aha and the wow to get yourself noticed, to really get people looking your direction? Because sometimes you can be saying these profound things without really being heard. So where does that come in?
Yeah, I mean, the first step certainly is that you stop talking about yourself so much and start talking about what's on your customer's mind and what's going on in their world, and how that plays to that. That's certainly one aspect, but then there's that other problem that, well, that basically everyone's doing that. Well, it's very unlikely that you're the only person in the world having had that idea. I mean, it happens, but it's the rare situation, right, where you have that singular idea that nobody's ever had, and it's going to change the world. So most likely, what you've got on offer is rather similar to what hundreds, thousands, maybe even millions of people have on offer too. So how do you send out with that? Well, by not being afraid and by stopping to try and be right, and playing by the playbook. So actually a favorite. So I'm actually a guitarist. That's one of my great hobbies, and I love playing jazz music. And one of the concepts in jazz music is that you can know all the rules, right? And you can play nice music and beautiful music by following all the rules that the brilliant composers have kind of figured out over the last centuries. But that's just gonna be, well, nice and beautiful, but so it doesn't get you the attention, but just hit one wrong note and you get people to look over. So what was that? And now the brilliant musicians are those that take that wrong note that just happened in the moment, not as a failure, not as a mistake, but as a springboard, as an opportunity to create brilliance. So, like Miles Davis framed it, like when you hit the wrong note, it's the next one that's going to make it good or bad, and that's what counts, right? So when you only play all the nice notes, no one's going to notice you, probably, rather likely. So, but just dare to experiment, try to, well, to look at, so what's at the edges, so what happens if I go off that rule, and just, so even if it doesn't work out perfectly the first time, what counts is what you do with that and what happens after you've hit that wrong note.
That's so I just want to say I love all of what you're saying, first of all, because I am a music geek. I love all those things. The other night my girls were like, Mom, pick a song for us, because we've got our old 80 gig iPod, the one that's like this big. It's as big as my face. We've got it plugged into a speaker in their room. Put something on. So didn't I put on Eric Clapton and the King? It was great. It was so beautiful. And the girls loved it. Now, another artist who I love is Jason Mraz. And a really famous song of his is I'm Yours. And people are like, oh, that's nice. It's fluffy. I'm yours. Awesome. But there's a moment in that song where he will play, and I know how to play it on the ukulele. He will play a song. I want to say it's the flat. I'm not a music savant by any stretch of the imagination. I play the easy stuff. But he plays an off note. I want to say it's flat, purposefully. And you can feel your brain switch when he does that. And then the next, he goes back into it in a way that re-engages you in the music, in the playfulness of the song. And that's what we're doing when we're learning and exploring and figuring things out kind of as we go, or knowing. And this is kind of part of the strategy of marketing, knowing what parts of you are going to naturally play that wrong chord in a way that attracts the people who like it. That's why we can play all those. I also play piano. You can play all those sharps and flats on the piano and it'll sound smashing. You're like, yes, let's go. And you're good. Yeah. If you know how to use those differentiators, those wrong notes, so to speak, to your advantage.
Yeah, and the point here is that, well, that's not totally rational, right? It's not 100% rational anymore. You got to trust your gut to a certain degree here, and go with what feels right as much as what your brain says is right. So, which is not to say that, well, you should dismiss your irrational part, but that, well, you probably cannot fully trust it with those kinds of choices, where it's
them, yeah, just
exactly.
play with them. I mean, can you imagine Jimi Hendrix if he just played by the rules? That wouldn't. Yeah, it wouldn't make sense. You wouldn't. No. We wouldn't have what we have today from Jimmy. It just wouldn't be.
We wouldn't have burning guitars.
This is a great, right? And I'm just thinking of like some of the sounds that come out of there. Or who is it who plays with a British penny?
Brian May from Queen, I think.
There you go. And it makes a unique, distinct sound. And like,
it does.
Who would think I'm going to play with a penny?
Yeah.
Just play with
it.
Actually,
if you listen to the guitar teacher, all of them wouldn't have made a career, or like the Dire Straits wouldn't exist if they would have learned to play the guitar the proper way. That's just not what those geniuses care about. Well, so and it's what makes, as you say, their style so distinct, and the distinctness, the specificity is what makes people look over. It's not generic anymore. It doesn't sound like anybody else. It sounds like distinctly Brian May, distinctly Eric Clapton, distinctly Jimi Hendrix.
I love that. I'm gonna, so this, if anybody takes anything from that last message, hold on to that. Because what makes you is the thing that's gonna light up the sky with your name. Now, with that, I want to invite you to share maybe some final thoughts, some last minute things that you think, oh, I didn't get a chance to say this, and I really need everyone to know. This is your chance to do that. And of course, tell people where to find you. Because, after this conversation, there are a lot of different people who may want to find you.
Yeah. Well, I think one important story that or message that's near and dear to my heart is that, well, you're not the star of the show, so it might be a good time to step off the hero's pedestal and leave it to your audience and your customers, because as you mentioned earlier, they have a hero already, and it's them, right? They don't need another hero. They don't show up to cheer for you. They much more wait for someone to show up and cheer for them, to hear them, see them, and feel them, and solve some of their struggles or give them a solution to some of their aspirations. And that much more means, well, stepping off the hero's pedestal than directing the spotlight onto yourself. So turn those spotlights around, directed onto the audience, tell a story, and that's how you position yourself to tell a story that resonates rather than having to persuade. And if that's something that you care about, then you might want to check out my online course, Crack the Clarity Code. The URL is on the screen or in the show notes, cracktheclaritycode.com. It's a 5-step process where I walk you through the process that I use myself when working with my clients to help them get from a rough idea or that feeling of inner clarity and finding the right words to nail that message, so that when they say it out loud and tell other people, they get them just as excited about that as they themselves are.
And don't we all want to make sure that, like, when we're telling a story, we want other people to be, really? Yeah, we love that. It feeds our soul just as much as it feeds theirs, because if you're doing it right, they are that engaged intrinsically, not just not just showing, right? We're not just using masks here. So then you've got that beautiful engagement on both sides in a way that deeply resonates. And then you start the movement, and then you make things happen. And so with that, I want to invite all of you to really think about that, to visit let me just make sure, cracktheclaritycode.com, to make sure that you're thinking about things in a way that will start the movement you were meant to start with, and help the people who need your help, who really want to take a lead in their world. And you maybe haven't quite nailed your messaging in a way that will get you there, get them there, and, crank that engine. So with that, I hope you all have a great rest of the day. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, follow, do all the things that you know to do. And we'll chat soon.